Hello, everybody. Okay, I'm Sumitra Selvaraj, as Isabel mentioned, and I'm going to dispense with the usual, these are your panelists for today, because anything you need to know about them, you can Google. What we're going to go through today is information that you can't Google about them, okay? So, today's topic, travel and making a social impact. I'm really, really glad to see that these three women that we have today have got such varied viewpoints on travel. You know, whether it's Deepti telling stories through her travel, or Jackie, who we had a really interesting conversation because I asked her, you know, I said to her, Jackie, you know, you champion such an amazing Malaysian traditional craft. What do you look for when you travel as a souvenir? And she said, oh, I don't look for souvenirs, I look for experiences. And we're going to find out a little bit more about that. And of course, we've got Deborah, who's all about sustainable, responsible travel, okay? So we're just going to dive straight into it, and I'm going to go with the first question. And we'll go in turn, but there's no hard and fast rules. If you want to jump in, just jump in, yeah? So, Deepti, you talked about this a little bit earlier today, but for the benefit of those who might not have been here, could you share with us when you embarked upon your current career, and what was the impetus to do so?
Right, so as I mentioned in the morning talk that I got into photography pretty late. It was 5 years ago when I, held my first camera, and then I felt like, there's something I can do into the photography. So that's how my journey in the photography started. And then I was traveling and doing travel photography, and later I realized I need to find something more deeper, to find, to make peace with my own memories, to make peace with my own life. And I think that was the way for me to let the stories flow, feel light, tell the stories of my personal stories and my mother's stories through the stories of other women. So that's how it started, the project Women of India. The impetus is, I really want to see that women in India, they find equality, they find equal job opportunities, whether they belong to the cities or whether they belong to the villages. They should have, equal opportunity. So that's the, thing which drives me to do this work.
We're going to be talking about your travels through India in just a bit. But before that, nearly a decade and a half in investment banking, Jackie, and then you chucked it all aside and started off with Tanoti. Tell us about that.
Yes, I did indeed. Also 5 years ago, the opportunity came when the Queen of Malaysia had decided to discontinue funding for a songket weaving workshop. And I was approached to be partners with my current co-founder to take over the community of weavers. And that was then that we had to do something very urgently. But what we wanted to do was preserve a heritage, preserve an identity of Malaysia that is really, really declining. So that was how we started this business of weaving, yes.
Okay, and Deborah, you've not always been the ardent traveler, have you?
No, I would say it has always been in me, but it sort of came out much later. And so really my kind of travel was birthed by volunteering trips since I was a teenager, and so I've been going on for community development trips since I was maybe 16 years old, and I will share a little bit more tomorrow as well when I went on my first solo community development trip to New York City, and that totally changed my life. And in 2014, I left Malaysia. My husband and I quit our full-time jobs. We self-raised funds months, enough to survive for a year together with our baby son. And we spent 2 years, initially it was supposed to be a year, but then we spent 2 years in Cambodia building schools because we saw that there was a need there. Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned early travel because that's actually what my second question was going to be. So I know 16 is when you started traveling. Jackie, what about you as a child? Did you have many opportunities for travel, and what did those experiences mean to you?
Not really. I only started traveling a lot when I finished university.
Okay, and Deepti?
Nothing, not at all. Because in the childhood, we just go to the next relative in the next city and spend your holidays with your aunt and uncle. Luxury traveling and traveling for, experience, that's still, I think it's now happening in India much more, where people want to venture out. Earlier, it was just about you meeting your relatives or going for a pilgrimage. Yeah, so nothing at all.
So, Jackie, when you started traveling at university or after university, right? At what point did you start thinking about the social impact of the journeys that you were taking?
I think it's very important that people who are providing the services get the most return. So I would try to travel and visit places or with people who are not institutionalized, so that we could actually return the money to the people themselves who are providing the services.
Could you give us a specific sort of example without naming any names? When you say institutionalized travel, what does that really mean to you?
I would imagine that, if you had to pay someone who was going to be paying someone else and paying someone else, then it's not something that I would rather do. I would rather go straight to the source, or as close to the source as possible. We would try to find or hunt out villages who are providing services, and then working as a cooperative to provide supplementary services around that village. So that's what I have been doing, and with my hotel, I've also been recommending this sort of travel for our hotel guests.
So I saw you nodding away vigorously, Deb. This is obviously something you believe in as well. Could you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think tourism is a huge industry, obviously, and there are many businesses that are built around the industry and providing services. But a lot of businesses are also, in some sense, exploiting the people who are providing the businesses. And many times, as travelers, we don't see that exploitation because it's not something that we want to dig into. But then, when there are cases and case studies where, for example, a becha driver comes up and say, I only charge a tourist 5 ringgit to bring him from A to B, but then another company actually charges 50 ringgit, you wonder where does all that money go to in between? And so I am absolutely and totally for you, where in as much as possible, where we can be independent as a traveler, where we can do our own research and go straight to the source and pay the money to the person who's providing the service, I would do that.
Great. That's exactly what I wanted to speak about next, actually. Deepti, in your sort of career as a photographer and your travels around India, how do you go about making the mindful choices?
Whenever I'm traveling, I don't stay at hotel because I need to cover the story. I need to be really close to the people. I need to build a trust. They should understand what I'm trying to do. I need to be very honest with them. I need to be very upfront. See, I'm going to take your picture. This is what I'm going to do. And I can't really make any promise that this can bring a change. I'm going to try and talk to NGOs, talk to different bodies, but I cannot commit. So it's very important to create that kind of mutual respect and trust with each other, because someone who is new to you is opening up their life in front of you. They're giving you the most personal information about them. So at any point of time, you cannot breach the trust. You have to maintain that ethical standards of for journalism, or whatever you call it, or humanity, I should say. That I really need to be very honest. So my choices of, I really want to make those choices that, it should give back to the society. They are giving me their time. They are giving me a piece of their life. So I really need to give back to them. It cannot be in terms of money. Sometimes it's just about the experience. If you have time, teach them 1 hour, 2 hour every day to the kids, and that's what I've done. So it's just, be a little more mindful when you're choosing to stay, to eat, or whatever you're trying to do with your time. So that's how I try my best to do.
Okay, so let's talk about being mindful about something very, very specific that you know very well. Being mindful about taking photographs. Okay. So there's the touristy holding up the Leaning Tower of Pisa kind of snap that everybody wants. And then there's, going out to rural areas and taking pictures of happy children splashing about in a river. What do we need to keep in mind when we're going out and taking photos while we're on holiday?
Right. So, for everything you do, you should have the clarity in your mind. What is your intention out of it? What are you trying to do with it? How your pictures are going to be used. I know that the basic rule is you go up front and ask people a permission, can I please have your picture? But in my profession at times we have to sneak out a picture or two, which is not great, but at times it does happen. The thing is that it's not easy for a stranger to allow you take pictures. It's kind of a thing I can probably take, talk on and on for 1 hour or maybe a workshop itself. So you really need to learn that how to build up on your pictures. You probably just go and say, hi, hello, what are you doing? I'm from here. Have a real conversation with them. Have a conversation and then try to take the pictures which they feel okay about. So yeah, whatever you're trying to do as a photographer, you need to be very, very respectful towards the people. You just cannot go and shove the camera on their faces that you want to take pictures. No matter what your pictures are going to do, this is a very, very wrong practice. You are going there to learn about their culture. You're observing them, but while you are observing, they are also observing you. They are also trying to learn from you. So make sure they learn the right things from you, not the wrong things.
Okay, speaking of pictures, I'm guessing that your recent trip to Ethiopia, Jackie, where you were in the middle of a bubbling lava lake, must have yielded some pretty spectacular pictures. Number one, I want to hear all about this volcano that you climbed. And number two, I want to know why you chose this particular travel destination.
More than 10 years ago, I was posted to Indonesia, to Jakarta. And I spent a lot of my weekends hiking volcanoes. So I thought that, volcanoes are incredible. I can't believe you asked me that. So anyway, volcanoes are amazing because it's a mountain. And once you get to the summit, there's something to see. It's different from, if you're climbing Mount Everest, you're at the summit and you can't see anything else, right? So volcanoes are visually very exciting, and there is a prize at the end. So I love to see volcanoes. And Ethiopia has the world's only permanent lava lake. And why would you not want to see magma, right? If you like to climb volcanoes. So yeah, I made it a point to go and visit Erta Ale, and I would recommend it for everyone. Has not erupted since January, so maybe.
Okay, so speaking about interesting travel choices, Deborah, I wanted to talk to you about this work that you do with Global Sustainable Tourism Criteria. You go about actually assessing tourism operators on these criteria. Could you just give us an idea of what these criteria are to start with?
So if you're in the corporate and you're more familiar with things like ISO, so this is very similar, but specifically for the tourism industry. And the Global Sustainable Tourism Criteria is something that the UNWTO came up with many years ago as a baseline for tourism operators, hotels and destination operators to follow, so that they are responsible and they're sustainable to the environment and to the people in which they operate. Yeah.
Okay, so could you give us an idea of what the criteria are, and I suppose whether we could apply it to our own travels?
Sure. I think I'll just put it into two categories because as travelers, we don't want to go into the technicalities of it. So one is the environment. So how environmentally sustainable is your business in terms of water management, waste management, electricity usage, and so forth. And it goes more into detail, solar panels and things like that. And then you have people. How do you care for your people? And oftentimes we we don't really look down at the hierarchy of tourism industry, where it sort of involves staff and the people. For example, if you operate within a community-based tourism operation where you have a homestay, who are the people running it? And they would be kampong people. Are they paid correct salaries? Do they have proper bedding? Are they given food to eat? Do they, are their salaries reaching minimum sort of salary baseline, or are they paid extra in terms of their care and what the business gives to these people, like the staff? Is it fair wages or not? So we're looking at the environment and then the people.
Okay, so let's talk about the people aspect of it for a little bit. I recently sort of did a little bit of investigation. I wanted to book a local holiday to a rainforest that will go unnamed. And part of the experience that was offered in booking this holiday was the opportunity to go to an Orang Asal, or indigenous people's village, and visit with them for 30 minutes. And it didn't sit right with me. Jackie, you're in the hospitality industry. I'd like to try and maybe get you to clear it up in my head. Why did it not sit right with me? How would you have done it differently, is maybe what I'm trying to get at.
It would not have sat right with me either. If I were to do an itinerary for you, I would make you eat with them. They will cook for you. And maybe someone would bring you around the village. So then there will be two groups of people who will earn money from you. If you were to go and just see the village, it's likely that none of them will be earning money. So it would not have sat right with me.
Could you just share, I know in your own hotel, your own hospitality business, you try and incorporate the villagers' lives into the hotel.
Yes, well, we do. We would offer tour advice to our guests, and we will introduce a villager and get the villager to organize the tour for our hotel guests. I think that's important. They need to learn how to do a business, and they need to know about service quality, and they will learn it that way, and earn a living, a sustainable living from this.
Okay, I'm going to kind of make a little bit of a leap, and this whole thing about earning a living and improving the lives of people that you come into contact with. Deepti, in your session earlier this morning, the first photograph that you showed us was of this incredibly young girl lifting a massive salt pan above her head, and she said to you that she doesn't go to school and that she has to work. Her father's told her that she has to work. I'll ask a second question after you've answered this one, but I want to know, first of all, why did this girl's story move you so much when there are millions of other such stories in India and elsewhere as well, but in India specifically?
So for me, photography is a very emotional thing. I don't do photography with my brains, I do photography with my heart. And when something moves me personally, I know that I need to follow the story. If it has moved me, it will probably move other people. And if I get the right picture, which can actually create an impact, which can actually, let people peep in their lives, what this girl is going through, that is what I need to do. So the reason I picked up this girl, we were chatting for 3-4 hours before I took the picture. And, she was smart, intelligent, she was asking the right questions. And I was thinking, wow, I mean, this girl belongs to these salt pans, but she has a great future. I could see it. But these people are stuck in this kind of fields for generations after generation. So I was equally sad for her. I really hope that she actually make it, she can do great stuff. And then I saw her doing this kind of work. It was unbearable. It was like, I was really, really sad that, she had to go through this. And there are other people, but I just need a picture to tell this story, because I truly believe in the power of images. It has brought changes. It has brought real changes, and that's what I try to do, to take this one kind of picture which can tell the story of this girl, and this girl can represent a community. While it's a picture of just one girl, but it's not just about her story. It's about all the children who are working in the salt pan without any protection, who might even get skin diseases and cancers and stuff. So it's a representation of the whole community. So that's what I would like to put it that way.
Because you said something else that struck a chord with me as well. You said, in describing the stories that you shared with us, that these are the stories that we don't see in our social circle nor in our social media. Which really, really hit home for me. How do we change this? How do we bring these stories into our lives?
To be honest, it's very hard work. It's time-taking, and it takes money. I couldn't have done it if I didn't have the passion to do things what I do. The people, what we see in the social media and the news, the stories from the cities, the story of politics and this and that, the thing which will bring more attention, more viewer to the media, their intention is very different from what the intention I have. And I really need a lot of time and freedom for doing what I'm doing. So I'm sure more and more people can join. It's not something which is so difficult. It might seem difficult to start with. But we really need to care for the people who are voiceless, who are underprivileged. So as a young woman from India, I feel that I really need to see more and more women doing women's story. Photography has always been very male-dominated profession, and the voice of women was absolutely missing. If I talk about how many women photographers are there in India doing this kind of work, there are very few. I can actually count on my fingers. So we need more and more women to cover the women's stories, because we as a women, we bring a very different angle to it. We have a very different sensitivity, we have very different emotions, and we can empathize with them in a very different than men can do. And the benefit of being a woman is massive. I'm like very grateful that these people accept me so easily in their life. They don't see me as a threat. If I were a man and I go and knock at a door, they will be threatened that why am I here? But that doesn't happen with me. If I'm going and knocking at strangers' door, they're like, come on, come in, have food, have tea. And it becomes very easy as women to be accepted. But first of all, you have to start on it, and then things will automatically fall into place.
Okay, you mentioned intention, right? So, Deborah, should we be traveling with an intent?
Absolutely. I think, and I will talk more a little bit about this as well tomorrow. I think our life is so short and so unpredictable, and there's this thing that I've been mulling over called legacy, and I think our life really needs to be linked to this legacy. And even with doing what we love, and we're all here for the same reason, because all of us love to travel, we would love to see the world. There needs to be a greater purpose than just seeing the world, and so it definitely needs to be intentional. And I think I just want to add on to what Deepti says as well. I think as women, we really have the upper hand of connecting with people that men may not have. And when I bring my children along to maybe the kampong areas or, the less developed areas, what happens is that I can sit down with other mothers who are perhaps maybe washing clothes or whatever, and I can engage with them in a conversation, whereas if a man comes or if my husband comes and sits down with this woman, immediately there would be a switch. And so bringing out these human stories is absolutely important, and I can't say this more enough, that that human stories are so important for us to realize the social issues that are around us. I think social issues are seen as big pictures that people cannot relate to, but if you bring human stories into play, that's when people realize that, hey, I can relate to a problem, or I can relate to a person, and I can be a source of influence, and I can actually make a difference. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt us for a second and just double check. We have about 5 minutes left. Do we have time for questions from the audience, or? Excellent. Okay, a couple of more questions then. Let's just jump forward. You mentioned problems and challenges faced, right? And I'm going to jump to Jackie, because there's a couple of problems and challenges that you face, monumental ones, in the course of getting Tanoti up and running and being sustainable. And one of it is knowledge and education. For example, in India, there is a Ministry of Textiles in India, which thrills me to no end. There is a Minister for Textiles. And the handloom industry is actually supported by a Government of India initiative to brand handmade textiles with a special tag. Could you first share with us some of the challenges that you face in awareness when it comes to songket weaving, and whether something like this might be beneficial?
Oh, for sure. I think songket weaving is not the only craft that is that we should talk about. I think the craft industry in general in Malaysia needs to be propped up, and there should be more awareness towards craft. I had statistics last year that in 2015, there was 500.5 million of sales in craft in Malaysia. And that seems like a formidable number, but if you divide that by 60,000 registered craftspeople, everyone is producing below poverty line. And it's a real injustice for Malaysia, because craft is our identity. It is what makes us as a people and as a population. It's what defined our culture, and it's how we can disseminate our identity worldwide. And why are we not investing more in craft? Why is private sector not looking into this area? Why is government not pursuing this, with more passion or more vigor? We don't know, but if there is less and less investment in craft, then there'll be less and less loyalty to the country. That's what I would be thinking. And how do you sell Malaysia if you don't sell craft elsewhere, right? And if this could be a little call for everyone to start looking at craft as subject of or symbols of our own culture and our own people. Yeah.
And this also applies to wherever you travel to, right?
Wherever you travel, yeah. So you will buy a piece of craft everywhere in the world because you want to connect with a person's culture, a population. And in Malaysia, what do? There's so little in terms of awareness and accessibility to craft. Yeah.
Great, I'm glad you mentioned accessibility. So how do we change this, specifically the accessibility to craft?
I would like to see, our airports doing something for free, maybe. Anyone from MAHB? But airports are the best spokespeople for craftspeople. And it will promote tourism, obviously, because if you saw something interesting, like Batik, a tourist would book the next ticket to Terengganu, isn't it? I would imagine.
Okay.
So yeah, could airports please do something?
Well, I'm really, you know what, we didn't plan this, but I'm so glad you said airports, because final question coming up right now. Deborah, where is your next travel destination? Where are you heading off to, and why there?
Well, I'm back to, so from Penang, I'm going back to KL to pick up my little daughter. So currently our family is split because of several events. So I'll pick up my daughter and I'll go back to KK to be reunited with my husband and my son. And then we will continue our work there with the rural communities. But the exciting thing is that next month we would be taking a month off to travel the UK, and we're doing some caravanning and some camping. So that's going to be good. Yeah.
Safe travels. Jackie, where are you off to next? More lava lakes? No, there's only one in the world, right?
There's a few, but this is permanent. My hotel organizes trips every couple of months. So next weekend, 9th to the 11th of September, is that next weekend or 2 weekends' time? We're going to the western tip of Borneo, Tanjung Datu. There is a pan-Borneo highway being implemented, and there will be a massive road to this area. And once there is, we fear that the population of hornbills and turtles will disappear. So we're doing a last hurrah to maybe, see the turtles in their natural habitat before, development comes. And we've invited, I think there are already 12 people in our group. So if anybody wants to join us to the most western tip of Borneo, please let us know.
Safe journey, Jackie. Come back and tell us your stories.
Yeah. I'll adopt a turtle. I don't know.
Deepti, where are you going with your camera next?
I really don't wish to go anywhere for a couple of months. I have been working in Tamil Nadu with, like 48 degrees Celsius temperature, and then in Ladakh, in the minus temperature. So I really want to be at home and feel my own bed and use my own toilet. I don't want to go anywhere, and probably I'll be in Singapore after KL, and then just be with family for some time, and then start on some stories in Rajasthan, and that's a project will begin. But yeah, I want to rest for a couple of months.
Well, whether you're traveling or resting, have an enjoyable trip, and thank you for your insights on travel and making a positive impact while you travel. That's it for today. We have time for questions.
I started traveling or backpacking in Southeast Asia 2 months ago, and one of the biggest challenges in the beginning was that the hostels tried to sell tours to us, sell us these 3-day packages, and it's really fast we noticed this is not what we want to do. We don't want to be, like you said, put into this village for half an hour and then taken to some temple and whatever. So we wanted to meet the local people, go to the villages or something like this. But then it's really hard. So you don't know the language, you don't know if the taxi driver is trying to rip you off, if he's taking you somewhere, or if he's working for another tour company as well and taking you there. So do you have any suggestions how to try to get in contact with the local people and avoid those tours?
Okay, so let's go specific to Malaysia. Malaysia specific, yeah, to address your question. Deborah, could you help out with this?
I would say if you have time, that you don't book your tours in advance. You probably want to spend some time here first and then get to know some locals if possible, and then ask if they have tips or if there are alternate ways that you can travel. For example, there is Uber and Grab, which can easily bring you to different destinations now without employing a travel agent. That's one. Two is to Google up probably sustainable tourism or responsible tourism operators, and with that, not a lot of companies use that as a label. However, having said that, a lot of people, there are also some companies who use it as greenwashing. So I think you just need to read, between the lines and kind of find a good company that you can work with. So that's the second one. And then the third one would be just to get to know different travelers and then share your stories, and then from there kind of take it off from there. That's only if you have, you know, the luxury of time, I would say. However, if you're coming for a very short time, then I would say go with a responsible tourism operator if you have to pre-book your tours. Yeah.
Was that helpful? Yep. Jackie, do you have anything to add to that in the course of your sort of travels around Malaysia?
Well, if you come to Borneo, I have an entire glossary of people that I can recommend to you. Depends on what you want to do. But yeah, it's hard if you're traveling alone and you need to get information along the way. Yeah, I feel for you. But come to Borneo, come with me. Anyone who travels with me, we will get the entire cost, we'll split it accordingly. But since I'm not a travel agent or tour agent, you have to promise not to die. That's the only condition. So if you promise not to die, we bring you.
Do we have any more questions? Hi, my name is Jenny. First of all, I want to applaud all of you wonderful ladies for, you know, doing a great work, you know, impacting lives. So the question I have for you is, what is your motivation? I'm sure the going can be quite tough, but what keeps you going? What's your sole motivation in keeping you going in whatever that you're doing today?
Deepti, do you want to start with this one?
So my motivation is I really don't want little girls to go through what I went through. If I had a bad experience, I want to save other girls from that bad experience. And as you said, that going on this path is hard. Yes, it is hard. I had a very cushiony job in a corporate, and then I had a good career as a travel blogger, and I could just travel for free with different companies. But then I realized that, you know, whatever I'm trying to do, what is the purpose? I don't know whether it's a purpose of life or not, but there's a purpose of my actions. And the purpose of action should be, you know, it should actually try to make this country, my country, or the world a better place. It's too big to say, but I think it helps. Even if you're just one individual, even if you're doing some small things, the small things get bigger one day. So when I started, I had no clue, but now feel that things are already there and falling into place. I have projects, I have sponsored projects, I'm working for different companies. So the motivation is just to keep on going. Don't think so much. Just do. Don't think so much. If you overthink, you're gonna be stuck. So don't think, just concentrate on the actions.
Feeling.
Good work. I think for me, it's a conscious decision to do what I'm doing. I've decided that whatever I do, I must keep my conscience clear. So for a long, long time, I was earning a lot of money, but I was, so I thought that, you know, conscience is so much more important, less toxic, you know, more healthy. So I've decided that whatever I do, the conscience must be good, and the heart must continue to be pure. And I'm not saying investment banking isn't, but by nature of the profession, it already is not. So, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think it's keeping perspective in mind. For me, it's just a realization that my life is much bigger than just me and I alone, and that one day I will leave this earth, and people will not remember me for what I have done for myself, but what I have done for other people, and that's what I will leave behind. And I think this realization became even more evident after I became a mother. And so, you know, if I want to teach my children values, for example, how to empathize and how to give and how to love, you cannot do it just by talking to them. You have to do it by showing them what it means. Yeah, so that keeps me going.
Did you hear their answers? There's a reason why we have the panelists and I'm the moderator, because my answer would have been, all I need is a gin and tonic to get me to the end of the day.
I actually have a question. This is for Deepti. you do documentary photography, which is something I absolutely love. How do you manage the balance between immersing yourself and introducing yourself to local culture, the local tribe, and the same with you, Deborah, without crossing that line or getting the stories that you want to get to pass on the message you want to people like us without being intrusive? Where does the line stand of engaging and helping and then just crossing that line a little bit too much where like, yo.
So you have to ask this question constantly to yourself that why are you doing this work? What is the motivation of doing this work? I'm doing this work because I want people to have a better life. They should be happy about, whatever change it's gonna bring. If it is gonna upset them, if it's gonna bring any kind of negativity, it's failing my whole purpose. Right, so if I'm going and visiting them, I really need to spend time getting to know them, getting to know their personality, what do they think of my kind of work. I cannot be, kind of forcing them to cooperate with me. They have to be with me with all their heart, and they should feel okay in my presence. I should not be so intrusive. They should be okay with my presence. They should be okay to eat with me, to laugh with me, to share their personal stories. This kind of stories are very personal. You can't get to this thing, when you're making one casual visit or one touristy visit to a village. You really need to build upon relationship. And that is when the pictures would show that, you have invested yourself in the emotions, in the life. It's just not about, the technology or the camera or whatever it is. So you have to keep on checking on your intention that why are you doing this work? You are doing this because you want to make their lives better, make a positive impact, or are you doing this for money, or are you doing this for publication? So you have to remind yourself every day that what is the whole intention of doing something of that sort.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.